I just had to unmute myself. So, hello and welcome to our last product crunch of the year, actually. My name is Lissy. I am a UX and UI designer here at Goodpatch. For those of you who have not heard of us, we're an independent design studio with headquarters in Tokyo and also two offices in Germany, one being in Berlin and another one in Munich, where I'm at the moment. Goodpatch specializes in digital product design, as well as consulting companies to help them become more innovative and embrace their digital transformation. And a quick heads up from our side, we still offer Product Hour. If you don't know what that is, Product Hour is a free hour of feedback for your digital products or services. So if you need someone, just some one-to-one time with one of us, just send us an email or visit the Product Hour website, which is product-hour.com for more information. And as designers, myself included, we obviously live off the feedback from our users and our colleagues and other businesses. So I can highly recommend this if you need a second or third pair of eye on your project. To come back why we're here tonight, Product Crunch, we have been organizing these events for about 4 years. And we're really proud to have formed a really inspiring and quite knowledge-hungry community. And as so many others, we moved our events online at the beginning of the year. And this obviously changed a lot how we interact with our community and also how they interact with each other. And there are people, though, that have been streaming or broadcasting online for a lot longer than we do. And this is why we're really excited to learn from 4 leaders in the streaming and broadcasting business and how they observe the current shift to online. Just to give you a quick heads up, I read this morning that to always look into the camera, so I put 2 googly eyes next to my camera lens to always be looking at the camera, which is a little trick I learned on LinkedIn this morning. So for our first speaker, I would like to introduce Aki, who is managing director and one of the founders of Safe Agency. Safe is an online agency that specializes in digital events, and she is obviously based in the prettiest of cities, which is Munich. I hope you're there right now. And Aki has really strong knowledge in the organization of major events such as conferences, award ceremonies, festivals. And even during a pandemic, she knows how to help the clients get their message out on the street. So yeah, please welcome Aki Headline.
Hi.
Hi. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks. It's great to be part of this event.
Nice. It's really nice that you can join us tonight. Just for information, you'll be given a quick introduction talk. The chat will be open for question if there are any. If not, you can just stop the presentation once you're done, and I will mute myself now. So the stage is yours.
Okay. How we came up with the idea of founding an event agency in 2020 and or an event agency, let's say it like that, in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. We think that's a really good question. And the answer is kind of simple because it just made sense and it was perfectly right for us. I think in the end, without COVID, we would have never really realized what kind of match we are, because we were so struck with our ongoing projects, with our work life, doing our own thing, and then suddenly full stop. The lockdown happened, everyone was doing home offices, and all the events were canceled as well. So I guess you all remember that. The funny thing is kind of that we, through the process of founding and exchanging ideas and finding our purpose, we never really thought about COVID that much. What I mean is the idea of Safe Agency was really that it didn't really matter to us if an event or any kind of project was offline or online. What generally mattered to us was the client story. So we thought about the best way to bring this story across under any given circumstances. And of course, with Corona and the circumstances kind of changed, but this kind of mindset kind of paved us the way throughout the whole let's move our events or our conferences to the internet movement. Me coming from a background of organizing big conferences, also before founding Safe, being a freelancer for quite a long time, I of course was super curious about the first wave of digital conferences. But what seemed really exciting to me first kind of got me bored quite quickly, because it just felt like I was yet in another Zoom call or in another online meeting. So don't get me wrong. I think Zoom calls are great, and they've been so important throughout the whole pandemic. They enabled remote office, remote work, and also they made meetings sometimes even more efficient. But what I think and what we feel really at heart is that what a Zoom call is definitely not. It's just not a conference. Imagine one thing. Imagine you're invited to a big party, a real one, like we had until March 2020. And you've heard about it, you've read the posters, and what you expect is an actual party, a party with a DJ booking, sound system, fog lights, and so on, the real deal. And then you get there and it's just two guys using their JBL box, playing lousy sound from a Spotify playlist. No lights, no sound system, no actual DJ, just this. And this is actually the same thing that happened with online conferences. A Zoom call in the end is a meeting. It's the same as in any other meeting you would do in person, in meeting in a room in your office, in a meeting room. But would you call that an event? I guess not. I would like you to think about one of the great conferences, the conferences we had until 2019. I don't know, something like South by Southwest, Web Summit, Slush, or whatever, and think about a great speaker you heard there. Would you feel the same if he or she told you the same thing alone with you in a meeting room in your office? I also would think not. And that's exactly what happened with online conferences. From 2019 to 2020, they changed from this, what you saw before, to this. And we asked ourselves, where did the show go? I wanted to use this quick talk to give you some insights of what we learned when moving conferences or other events from offline to the internet. And the first thing I spoiled already, I think, it's don't forget the show. The speakers, the content, the topics are crucial for a conference, but they are just the start, your basis, and it's always about how you present it. In the first wave of online conferences, it just felt like everyone forgot about that. We realized that for digital events, it's just as important as for offline events to keep your audience entertained. And there's one very obvious thing, obvious for us, but also for the audience, that you can do, and it's to make your stream look good, to make it stand out from your regular Zoom calls. With just a little effort and just a little design skill, you can make it your stream. We got most of our inspirations actually kind of from TV productions. It's really the small things that make it more interesting and more fun to watch and more catchy. We used motion graphics, for example, or intro animations, or for example, something like lower thirds, or even something as easy as a watermark logo in your top corner, or even designing the backgrounds of your split screens, just to keep people hooked. And another thing, and that's also very important, is a good moderator, because people are still not not 100% used to online events. So you need someone to guide you through what's happening, through your event. And that actually also explains everything that is going on and connects the dots between topics and speakers and everything. And one last thing that we didn't want to forget about the show was the stage setup. So we've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of living rooms in the past 9 months. I'm actually in a living room right now, but a living room is just not a stage. Conferences kind of take place on stages. So of course, I don't want to say that in-person event stages need to be adapted 100%. They're too big, they're too expensive, but why get rid of the concept completely? What we did was to use unused spaces that were unused because of COVID to build small or bigger stages there. We used spaces like clients' offices, or currently shut down public spaces, or offices that were currently under construction, for example, to build up our stages. And of course, we added some fog and some lights there as well. You wouldn't believe what this little kind of stage design can do. It actually sets the tone for the whole event. It brings across an atmosphere you want to bring across for the event. And it also conveys a certain professionality. And also, of course, like for this kind of event, you have speakers joining remotely, and they are still in their living rooms, which is totally okay. But even for them, joining your studio and being remotely joined to this studio feels like they're actually joining an actual event. That just changes the mood and also how they present and how they are part of it, if they see this. So we realized that kind of online events give the opportunity to use what we know from shows, from TV productions, and add what we have, the possibilities we have online. So everything that is about audience interaction and so on. This kind of brings me to the next point. It's rethinking formats. With networking is different with alcohol, without alcohol. So in the first wave of bringing conferences to the internet, the hardest part was for us and for our clients to say goodbye to certain formats. So it's possible to really adapt everything and to really move everything you knew from your conference before, from your offline conference to the internet. So you really need to adapt, and you also need to learn to say goodbye. For example, to the kind of networking part. It's just different if you meet people at the after party of a conference with a drink in your hand, instead of meeting them in a Zoom call. So what we have is 5 senses. The audience has 5 senses, and all of those are triggered with real events. Online, we can only reach 2 of those senses. So what we learned is to really make those 2 senses count. And that's why we actually need to rethink all of those formats. So isn't keynote online the same as offline? What else can we do? And most important, how can people actually connect? And what we generally realized is that the audience with online formats way more enjoys actually watching people being in a dialogue. It's more about 2 or more people talking to each other than one person giving a talk. And if it's just one person giving a talk, it shouldn't be a 45-minute talk just looking in the camera and telling them that, because that's where kind of the stage is missing. And what we did, we came up with new kind of interview formats. We had more panel discussions and moderated Q&A sessions. We added to all of our keynotes, we added Q&A sessions. And of course, we used tools like, for example, Slido and other interactive tools that were added to next to the live stream, with which you can actually interact, and then be with you as a guest or from the audience can actually send the question to this studio setup that is actually usually really detached, but with this setup you can actually interact. This sounds very basic, but it really worked. And of course, we also came up with more creative stuff and more creative ideas to interact with people, for example, I think we really learned is an online event is just as much work as a usual event. We thought it's just a webinar, just bigger. That's really a sentence that we heard so many times. And we totally understand where this comes from. At first sight, it seems like many of the tasks of an event manager are cut out when moving to the internet. No guests on site means no catering, no guest routing, no security concept, no big stages. But actually, that's a misconception. Online conferences just need as much love and care and sweat and tears, let me tell you, as offline events. Think about it this way. Would you let a speaker for your conference just find her or his way to the conference themselves and then find the stage there? No artist care, no check, no brief. Of course not. And to have many briefings, as many call sheets as I did before, if not even more. Because speakers and artists joining remotely makes it way more difficult to get them in time and place at the right time. So, and timing for live streams, you know that, are super essential. So remote speakers need to kind of handle their technical setups themselves. We, as an event manager, you're kind of out of control, and you need to, you cannot make sure if they're there on time, except calling them. If they're on site, for example, they're there, and then everything is kind of set up. So the thing is, what we learned is you can, or that we knew from before already, you can never say things too often. And what we also learned that it's just still people that you're working with. So, and that's one funny story we can tell. So that's one big learning from our side, is that we realized that 9 hours of live stream without any breaks is not only tough for the host and for the stage production team, but also for the audience. For one of our big live streams, we had so much content, so many great speakers, that we simply forgot to plan in breaks in the agenda. It was not until one of the guests actually wrote us a feedback that it was really hard for them, because they struggled so much because they didn't want to miss anything. But they urgently needed to, you know what I mean. We actually think that it was a joke, and we really hope that they took the break that they needed. But generally, it's true. Like with any other conference, we need to take breaks into considerations, not only for bio breaks, of course, but also to leave people the time to process all of the content and to really transition that. And this is kind of what leads me to my very last point, that generally, less is more. I know this might sound kind of odd after me telling you about and to not forget about the show and stages and stuff, but what we realized over the past 9 months is that there's such an overwhelming amount of things you can do with your online event. New online event tools popping up constantly, gamification, new matchmaking formats here and there, and of which are many really, really great things. But the question is, do you really need all of them for your event? Offering so many things can often lead to people getting lost. You distract them from what's really important. Some don't even make the way to your live stream. The question should always be, what should your event be about? So what we learned is to really sit close to our clients and talk to them and to find out what their main focus is. And in our cases, it was mainly one live stream. And then we make everything possible to make this live stream or basically make the best out of the live stream that we could. Yeah. So thanks so much for your attention.
Thanks very much, Aki. That was really interesting. I actually noted down ideas for my next Zoom call, and also maybe some ideas that we could use for Product Crunch as well. I mean, you can't see it here, but we do. My colleagues, Alex and Felix, they put a lot of effort into creating little screens and overlays for our Twitch channel. Which just adds that little bit of extra to just another live event.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no, that was really great. We do actually have a couple of questions. someone's asking, what has been the most challenging event you did so far?
Basically, actually, that was the one that I showed on one of the pictures with the fog, where we built because that way we actually that was the first event where we actually translated most of the things we had in the real event. So that was a sequel, so it's yearly, and in the end it was 83 speakers joining the event, and it was a really long live stream, and that was super challenging, and also of course really briefing and letting everyone know of 83 speakers. So you never know where to start, like what people actually know, and then where they start, and what they already know. So this was, I think, one of the most challenging events. Yeah.
And another question is, what are the special benefits of online events over local events?
Okay, actually, right now we don't have any other option, but I think the benefit for online event is actually if you want to bring content across. So and it really opens so basically, if it's not a lot about only interaction but really content, that way I think you have the possibility to really open it for a huger crowd, in my opinion. And then also the way that people can kind of choose, of course, if you have a live stream, you always offer all of the content on demand afterwards, so kind of people can choose when they want to consume what. And I think that's one of the benefits. But of course, I see a lot of benefits to offline events as well. I didn't want to make it seem like it's different.
No, that's really great. Right, I would like to move on because we've got still a lot to do today. Thank you very much, Aki. I jotted down some ideas for our events as well, and hope to see you soon.
I hope so too. Thank you.
So our next speaker is Thomas Mason. He is a business presenter and BBC broadcast journalist who has been in the business for over 15 years. And he would like to talk about the 2020 vision and his personal reflections on a year in broadcasting. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Lizzie, and hi, Aki, if you're still there. I'm in my virtual studio here in London, which I have to confess is a sort of rebooted version of my living room. So one of the first things about this was I had to use my living room as a virtual studio because we all had to switch the way we did broadcasting, didn't we, in 2020? So I'll talk you through that. But little simple things like turning the books on my bookshelf the other way around, and I've got this banner here from the podcast I was presenting, which hides very good for hiding a multitude of sins and all sorts of wires from TVs and things that you can't see behind me. So had some fun with that this year. Yeah, I just wanted to talk really about some of my reflections on the year. Just to be clear, I'm speaking on my own behalf. I'm not. This isn't like a sort of a BBC official presentation, but I work as a member of staff there, so I just wanted to give you a bit of a sense of that and some of the other things I've been up to. 2020 has been a really interesting and challenging year, and I think for me it's been probably one of the most multimedia type years. That I think this year I've spent a considerable amount of effort working in a few different mediums, so radio, TV, digital video, podcasts, and smart speakers. So if I can talk about a few of that pays the bills, it is as a broadcast journalist inside the network newsroom at the BBC in London. If you ever watch the BBC News, there's this big cavernous space behind, and I work somewhere down there in the pit, so you sometimes see me in the background. The main task there is writing the national news for BBC Radio 4. If you're outside the UK, we also write a lot of news for the World Service. And our news gets repurposed across all sorts of different networks. So I think Europe's biggest radio station is BBC Radio 2. That is a popular music station, so that gets the highest listener numbers. But it's about adapting the style and the content of what we talk about for a slightly different audience versus a very news savvy, quite highbrow audience, say on BBC Radio 4. So That's my day-to-day job. It's been involved this year just turning the summaries around on the hour. We do a considered half-hour-long program at 6 o'clock in the evening, the 6 o'clock news, which is a sort of a slightly dying art in the news business, which is the sort of daily. This is what we thought were the most important stories. This is the bulletin of record, and I think most countries still have something like that on radio and TV. But we find we're doing fewer of them. So there's a few key points in the day: 1 o'clock 1 o'clock at lunchtime, 6 o'clock in the evening, 10 o'clock at night, particularly on the television, are the key points, and people want that kind of bulletin of the record. A lot of the rest of the time, it's just about keeping summaries, giving the latest developments as they happen. And we also work for the Today programme, which is the biggest current affairs programme in the UK, and that's between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. in the morning, and quite often, about a third of my time on my main shifts, the sad reality is you've got a lot of people working overnight actually to make those headlines sound really good in the morning. People who've been with those stories, working out what's going on. So sometimes I have to get involved in that. So I was doing that earlier this week. In terms of how this year has changed and what I've been up to, those main radio news shifts are quite long. It's quite common in broadcasting. They're about 11 and a half hours long at a time. You do 3 of them, and then you have 3 days off, which is quite nice, where you can catch up, not just hopefully with some sleep, but with some rest, with some friends, and do some other projects. So it's a 3 days on, 3 days off shift rather than the standard sort of 5 days of work and a 2-day weekend. And this year, what I've done in those days off has been quite different, partly because of the pandemic. So one of the things you can do is you can go and make yourself available to other parts of the BBC if you're a broadcaster. Last year, I did a lot of extra work with a political reporting programme in the UK called Today in Parliament, which is again both on BBC Radio 4 and the BBC News channel. Doing extra shifts. However, of course, what happened to our parliament, as I'm sure in many of the countries around Europe, is it first of all shut down, and then it reopened a bit like with us, giving our virtual contributions from all over. So they now have a maximum of 50 MPs, deputies, members of Parliament, allowed in the studio, allowed in the House of Commons at any one time. And then there's been these debates about whether they should allow people with particular medical needs or whatever coming to the chamber. So I was involved a lot in highlight shows telling the story of what had happened in Parliament, not just in that main chamber, but in the building. There's all these different committees that discuss lots of public policy issues. We still have the House of Lords in the UK, which is a mixture of some people who are there because they were born into the right family, and some people who have had quite notable careers in different areas. So there was lots of, in normal times, loads of stuff coming from our Parliament to talk about. This year it all shut down. There was much less of it, and what we found within the BBC is lots of people have been working much more within the core part of their job, the core organisations. I don't think I'm letting out any state secrets when I say that the way we've come into our buildings since COVID-19 has changed a lot, and the entire BBC is actually working on only 12% of its staff in the buildings, going into the buildings at any one time. So really quite amazing. I mean, we've all seen when we watch the news, you were getting used to people standing, presenting social distancing, but a lot of that work, a lot of the production work has been from home for lots and lots of people, including presenters. My particular role, it was deemed to be one of the kind of essential roles where we had to keep going into the building, which is down the road from me in London the whole time. So I haven't done that many shifts from home, but the few I have, there are certain tech challenges. You have a laptop that's not, has certain broadcasting software that's very different from just having a normal MacBook Pro. So there's all that, and you do miss that going just to tap your speak to your colleague, tap them on the shoulder, have a discussion about what a script should be, or so forth. So I personally have been, I think, quite lucky to keep going in and doing my job during the pandemic, just because it's I think for everybody's mental health, if they are able to get out of the house and do things, a lot of people probably prefer it when they do, and I think it's generally better for the news output. But clearly, we've been in the minority, and somehow the show has managed to stay on the road. A few other projects I've been doing this year to talk to you a bit about those. Digital video, we were able to move a bit around the BBC. So while my primary role is in radio news, I was doing 3 months with digital video team at the start of the year from January to March. Indeed, I was on a shift at the point when the lockdown began, and we had to make a clip about what Boris Johnson was addressing to the nation: "You will stay at home." And I think that was one of the probably most watched digital clips ever. Had about 20 million views. Again, that's a very different broadcasting mindset. The audiences you're trying to attract tend to be younger, tend to be audiences that are consuming content on the go. And then just repurposing videos for different formats. So we do vertical videos for Instagram and Facebook and so forth. Some of the other things I've done this year, as well as that, you see behind me this banner, Leading Edge. This is a project I've been up to outside of work for the Henley Business School, which is one of the leading business schools in the UK. They decided that they wanted to do a podcast. It's called Leading Edge. It was to really open up what they were doing, some of their academics in their ivory towers somehow, who often write a lot of these quite dry books. How can we bring their work to life and share it with an audience? Their audience, they're effectively selling MBA courses and executive MBA courses for people a bit later on in their career, for people to go and listen to. But it wasn't an overly promotional thing. It was more about how can we bring some of their academics to life. So we did some fun titles, things like "My Boss is a Robot," Help, where a guy called Professor Ben Laker was telling us about his predictions for the future. We did things like how to get your boss's job and keep it. We looked at diversity a couple of times, the inclusion trap when being at the table is not enough. Some studies about the right fit, that we all supposedly come into 4 personality types, how you keep those people engaged at the workplace. So my challenge as the presenter of that was to talk to all the academics, speak to them about what their interesting research was, but find out how to present what they were doing in a way that would engage people, and you might find it quite interesting if you were listening it to in your ears in the gym, or when you're doing the cooking at home, or on the way to work, on a train if you're lucky. So that was a quite big project. I've put a link. Shall I put it again in the chat? Well, I'll put it in your chat. Maybe you can share it, Lizzie. So that's Henley, henley.ac.uk/leading -edge, but hopefully you can share that link, and that Leading Edge podcast, it's available on iTunes and Spotify. So we've just done a second series that's gone out. The last episode went out 2 days ago. 4 episodes, and the main contrast between doing series 1 and series 2 was where we did it. So series 1, we did it in very nice Radio Works studios in London. We had a producer there, we had a green room, we had all the clients were actually watching it go out live. It was almost like a live performance. We had snacks in the green room. It was a real nice production, and very much changed from that to little old me in my Aki, my studio from home here in London, with my Leading Edge banner for series 2. And we've all had the experience of probably attending a lot of Zoom calls, participating in them. I found it quite different just doing presentation on a well, it wasn't Zoom, but it was some kind of video platform. And it was partly the format, because we were talking to these academics one-on-one, trying to get down to about a 30-minute episode, but the conversation might go on for an hour in order to get the best 30 minutes. But just subtle things really made it harder, I think, to do something like that remotely. Things like, particularly on the first episode we did remotely, there was a short delay on the line, so if you said something was really interesting and you wanted just to jump in or bounce back from one person to the other, it was just that bit harder. And that versus when you can actually sit down with someone 10 minutes before you start and have a little chat with them and discuss what you're going to say. That was a real challenge. Now I know even for this, and we talk about the production value that goes into events. So even on today's seminar, you know, I was speaking to you guys you started it 30 minutes before you were kind of getting all the speakers together. So it's really important, isn't it, that just that taking it really seriously, all that pre-production stuff. The sorts of techniques I suppose I developed just to make that a bit smoother, that process, was rather than when we got a guest online, rather than just saying to them, right, you're rolling, like we did in episode 1, and you've got all these other people, you know, watching who are part of the production process, just to say, right, look, the cameras are off. Let's just have a 10-minute or a 5-minute chat. This is what we're going to discuss. These are the sorts of questions I'm going to ask. You know, are you feeling comfortable? So just trying to replicate those real life moments in the virtual world, I think made a real difference. But it is challenging. So that was doing a remote podcast. Yeah, and I think that was it was different for us. It was different for me, but it was a really interesting challenge. And then I just mentioned smart speakers briefly as well. That's a new area where the BBC is engaged. So the news that we do on the radio also gets turned into something you can get on what's called the BBC Sounds app. It's a radio and podcast app. They didn't want to make all of their content, I suppose, purely reliant on what Spotify or Apple will allow them to put out. So they've done their own app. There's also a smart speaker service. So as well as just doing a 30-second news summary or a 2-minute news summary that's much like what you hear on the radio, there's also, I'm hopefully not going to set everyone's smart speakers off now, but if you say, Alexa, I can hear somewhere in my flat there, Alexa, give me BBC News. It now does what's called it's a bit like a personalized streaming summary. So rather than just giving you the same 3 minutes as everybody else, it at various points it says it stops and it says give me more. So if you want to hear more on a particular topic, at any point you can say give me more and it will go deep. So you could go from a 3-minute news summary to a half-hour one. So that works with all Amazon and Alexa devices. So had a little bit of a flavour of all of those this year. It's been an interesting year. It's been different. I've had to do some things differently, but I've quite enjoyed it and kept building up some of the different areas I've been working on. So any questions, happy to answer them.
Great, thanks very much, Thomas. We do actually have a question from Peter. He said, how do you think a cross-media approach can be used in favor to add value to journalistic products? And would you say it is better to split information up and have additional information on different kinds of media, or to simply mirror the content in different types of media?
Yeah, I think this comes up. I mean, there's a bit of a debate in the BBC about this. You know, we have all these different, or what we call output. So, you know, the 6 o'clock news on Radio 4, the 10 o'clock news on BBC One, and that is a kind of. It used to be that each one of those outlets would develop sometimes its own stories, and if you were Newsnight on BBC Two, you might have an exclusive story. And all the resources would go into that, and then it might get mentioned elsewhere, but it would be their story. So even though it's one big organisation, it was their story. What they're doing, there's a move towards what's called a central commissioning model. So it's about, I suppose, doing, and I think lots of media organisations facing challenges like this. It's how to do fewer stories, because sometimes there's just so much information and there's only so much space. Okay, if you've got a half-hour radio program, you've got half an hour, but if you've got one mobile phone screen, there's only so many stories you can fit on that bit there, or the top of the phone. So what they're moving to a central commissioning model, so it's basically fewer stories but wider impact. So seeing if they can make planned stories work across more platforms. Certainly in digital video, when I did three months out, I was quite surprised by just how much customization they do for different formats. So you would start off doing the horizontal video that would be about 3 or 4 minutes long sometimes, and then it was quite a lot of fiddly work. That we had some special templates in Final Cut Pro to turn them into vertical versions. So
Instagram.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And what one I worked on, and I can also share a link of that here. I did an original story. It was about the financial independence retire early movement, the FIRE movement, if anyone's heard of that. This is about people who save really hard in their 20s and 30s to hopefully, if they're lucky, retire by 40. So it was about getting some different perspectives on that. And we again, it was a challenge of doing different Skype interviews and making it really interesting. But that worked really well. We did that as a separate Instagram version. It got 600,000 views on Instagram. We did it as a separate Facebook video. It got another 700,000 people, as well as the main one on our website. So there is a whole team of people actually repurposing content. Things like subtitling takes a lot of effort. But I think my answer to the question is, if you are able to do it, yes, you can make your content go further. Sometimes not everything. Don't try and force every bit of every story into every different platform. Sometimes you need to make the way you write about the way you present it different. But if you can do that planning, then it can certainly pay dividends. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks very much. We're a bit tight on time already, so I would just like to move on to our next speaker. Thomas, you can mute yourself.
Right, thanks.
Again, thanks very much. That was great. So our next Sonnemann. Nick is the founder and CEO of the innovation agency Future Candy. If you're based in Germany, you might have also heard about his podcast with the same name. He's a leading expert in the field of future and innovation research, and he is constantly on the lookout for state-of-the-art methods for successful innovation. And I can see that he is really taking Aki's words to heart as well and giving us a really good presentation already. And he's also the one with the best background, I have to say. Everybody's literally in their living room. Thanks very much, Nick.
Okay, thank you, Lissy. Hi, everyone. I'm Nick from Future Candy. Nice to meet you. Let's go. My short speech is called "The Future Has Turned," and I will also talk about the future of streaming. As an innovation agency, it was interesting to innovate ourselves a lot because of all the changes that the year brought for us. Our traditional business before COVID was meeting clients, being on stages somewhere, talking about the future in presentation, in keynote speeches, or giving like a workshop at location. Or traveling with clients from Europe to China to meet managers over in China and learn about digitalization, or traveling to Silicon Valley or Tel Aviv. So all this was part of our business. And of course, we had to change this business. And so maybe interesting for some of the audience now to learn about how you can integrate streaming into a consultancy and agency business. First of all, yes, we already before COVID, we started a podcast. So because many people have asked our clients or many of our fans and people who want to understand a little bit more about Future Candy, they've asked the question, what are you actually doing? What is an innovation agency doing? And so what we do is we've started a podcast where we meet the people who we work with in our projects, and we talk about what is innovation and how does it work, because many people have a misconception about innovation. They think it's really high level. It has to be like some kind of vision only. And we found out in our podcast that innovation in all areas is super operative. You need to think about what software to use, how to structure meetings, who to integrate stakeholders. And this is what our podcast is about. But leaving that aside, because of COVID, we had to change our entire modus of working. Our mode of working was, as I said, a lot of presentations, traveling to clients. Now we had to do everything from Hamburg, from our headquarters. So we talked to one other agency in the same building, and we moved one. We basically teamed up with them, and we built an entire TV studio. So we had to invest some money to actually buy all the technology and especially the lamps. And so for bigger consultancy projects, for bigger workshops with many stakeholders on client side, we actually using this huge TV-like studio now, because in order to tackle Zoom fatigue that everybody is just tired of just looking at the screen sharing. So sometimes they want to invest in having a real TV-like presentation. We of course have a little bit smaller setup like you see today. But I don't have my colleague now using the editing machine. I do it here on the screen sharing, but it's a similar setup. We both have a professional, semi-professional lamp. We have a background. So in order to tackle this situation for our clients, and this similar to what Aki said in the beginning, we do have events for our clients. For example, we're doing a virtual China trip, but the virtual China trip, of course, is much shorter. It's only a couple of hours instead of days. And we notice the same thing that Aki is saying. The attention in front of a screen is so much shorter. So all presentation had to be much more concise, which gave us another problem. We had to ask all speakers to prepare much better. Of course, it was only the entire trip was only a couple of hours, starting at 10, ending at 1, and all presentations were only half an hour maximum. So that was an entire different setup. And so Zoom fatigue is something that I notice, and I will. This is something we have to tackle next year. And in that sense, COVID came a little bit too early to us. The technology wasn't ready yet for many of our businesses to be completely digitalized. And so one technology that I discovered is this here. We can all be avatars we can be in a workshop scenario as avatars, and so we meet in our home office or wherever we are, and we will see our colleagues as avatars, and we will actually hear them whenever they're left or right of us. We will have the experience of this kind of the audio experience as well. And this is so much better than a Zoom meeting. This is a team meeting of us, that the video we see here. So sometimes when we have a team meeting, we use this. You can only use one of those glasses here, one of those augmented reality glasses, for maybe 1 or 2 hours. Then it gets a little bit heavy on the head. But I'm sure the next generation of all these devices will be much lighter. So this will definitely be a replacement for Zoom meetings and Teams meetings, because we are all getting a little bit tired of. You have so many advantages here in this technology. One advantage is you can have this. You can meet in a room like this, and I can go to my colleague and say, come to the side, and I have a short chat with him, even though I'm in a room with everyone else. This is something that's not possible in a Teams or Zooms or Skype setup in a group chat. So other software we use that I maybe can recommend to some of the listeners here is Hopin. It's a UK-based event software company. They have a very, very nice setup. They have breakout rooms. They have a very nice networking and chat feature. I can recommend that. But it's a quite expensive software, but it's really, really sophisticated. I can recommend that for online events. A new startup from, I think, Berlin. It's called WonderMe, and they've similar to Hopin. They've created these rooms and circles. You can go, for example, from one room to the next, and then you can even build circles in there. So you can decide how big the crowd should be. Maybe there's only 2 people in a circle. Maybe there's 4 people, even though there's 10 people in a room. Stuff like this. Wonder, good tool, and of course for digitalization, we use Miro. Maybe you've heard of that. What we plan next year in terms of streaming, we want to build an academy So we want to host a lot of videos. So some of the consultancy work we've done always we've done that in person. When there was a lot of repetition. So we had similar content, many different clients. So now we decided to record that and upload it on a website and then give our clients a login. We will start that next year. So now let's move Future Candy to the side. What is going on in the streaming business beyond our company? There's going to be new hardware coming up, new displays. We will, for example, see foldable screens. Here we see our one screen foldable. So we have all kinds of features with a foldable screen. I show you one. We'll see, for example, new media forms. So suddenly you have much more space to put videos, to have text. And so this will definitely change some of the publishing. We'll see the same thing happening in TVs. So the TV of the future can be rolled up. As you see here, they can expand and then they can roll up, roll down in the silver boxes there. This is how it looks. So the TV screen in your living room can be different sizes, whatever you want to watch. When you have an audio that you're listening to, it's maybe only a really small screen. When you're having a blockbuster you want to watch, it's really big screen. Or we have this here, a screen that's movable. Here you see a guy, he participated in physical meetings, even though he's in a home office. This is called remote telepresence. So he can drive using the arrow keys of his laptop. He can actually drive through an office and participate in meetings. And he has a camera, so he knows where he's driving. He can see his colleagues and he can talk to them directly. So it's really, really useful when you want to have this semi-physical presence. And then we have a new device coming up, a glass for consumers. Here you see a prototype of Bosch, and there's a small laser built into the frame. And so the laser will basically send a light beam into your eye. And so the picture will be built in your iris. Yeah, so it's from the outside, it looks like a normal glass that someone is wearing. But when you're wearing it, you're actually seeing pictures like this. So for people out there in the ordinary public who are wearing glasses, or the people who are wearing sunglasses, they can actually buy a device like this here soon. And this is how it will look. You see the form factor in here, and you see that the frame is a little bit bigger than in an ordinary glass. But the funny thing is, people predict now in the tech scene that Apple will come out with a device like this, and Apple has actually announced they will bring out a glass like this, but they didn't say when. So maybe it will be 2 years from now. And the funny thing is, the form factor is much better than the Google Glass, where you had the display outside. Here you have the display basically built in, because the display is your eye. New content will come up. We will see, because of the lack of trade shows this year, we saw that many companies went to have a press conference in augmented reality. Here you see the CEO of a Chinese mobile phone company called OnePlus, and the latest version of the phone was presented in augmented reality. So all the journalists received the device, switched it on, and they could actually see the press conference. Here you see it again. This is how it will look. So we see new forms of content becoming important. We also see here a new form of virtual reality content in a car. So imagining you're sitting in a car, especially in the future in a self-driving car, and you're putting on one of those virtual reality devices, and the content that you see is connected to the driving car. So whenever the car turns left or it will turn right, the content will move in the same direction. So you have this kind of connection to the environment. This is something a startup from Audi is producing now, called HoloRide, and they've teamed up with Disney to create specialized content. We'll also see in streaming in the future, we will see voxels. Voxels is computer-generated images out of out of real content. So imagine the following scenario: you're in a football stadium, or American football, or European football, and there's 60 cameras in a stadium like this, and they're filming a lot of content, of course. But now Voxel create picture even though there hasn't been a camera. So just from the material that has been filmed, voxels can create pictures that aren't there actually. So for example, imagine you in a setting like this, you can then decide, I want to be the ball. So you can see how the entire scenery would have looked like if the camera would have been inside the ball. This can only be done because of computer-generated imagery, and this is called voxel. Specialized camera inside a stadium. This will change the content. Here you see how it looks, and all these images will just be created from computers. There will be new camera technology soon. So for example, Lissy said this in the beginning, when we have web conferences, we tend to look down on the screen. So you will see my forehead, similar to the woman here on the screen. The important thing now, we'll see new cam software coming up. They will render your picture. So even though you're looking down, it will look like you're looking into the camera. So this is what a software company from Germany is doing. They're called Casablanca AI. So I can look down, but my eyes will look to the audience as if I'm looking into the camera. It's just a software feature. And we'll, of course, see new distribution coming up. Maybe you've heard that Netflix has started in France with linear streaming. So there's a letter missing, but here you see how it looks like. So you don't have to program your content anymore in streaming. It will actually be a TV station coming up in Netflix. In France, it's already available. I'm sure this will be coming to Germany and all the other countries soon. It's called Direct. Yeah, this is a feature. And then there will be new exploitation of cool screens. For example, the cinema screen, we'll see that because many cinemas are not fully used anymore, they're thinking of new usage. And this is, for example, you can, as a small clique of gamers, you can rent a cinema to play there instead of at home. You can use your cinema screen, and all the big publishers of media content will use all kinds of new outlets to put their content. And this, for example, the car, as you've seen with our HoloRide, just for normal car content on the tablet, you will see a lot of content coming up. Warner has now created a company called Warner Media Ride, and they specifically built a setup for content distribution into cars. My last argument for a growing streaming audience is the audience numbers in Germany have risen a lot since the 70s. So when you look back to the 70s, we've seen that there's only a few outlets. There was only TV, radio, newspaper, and books. And since then, we've seen an increase in outlets. There's been, of course, the streaming came, and music and internet came up. And so this has led to media increase, usage increase. And from the 70s, the average media time we spent consuming media was 3 hours. It went up to 10 hours. So 600 minutes in an average day, the German audience is using media content. And I predict now here that because of all these technologies, what we've just seen, we'll see an increase from that. And I think in a few years' time, when we have self-driving cars, we'll come to 10, 11, or 12 hours media usage in a day. So this is a challenge for all of us. Me as a B2B consultant and all you out there thinking of new forms of content. We'll have to professionalize, we have to be better, we have to be more entertaining, and we have to embrace all this new technology. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. That was super interesting. I mean, we had to switch a lot of tools that we use as well in the beginning, because we spent a lot of time consulting clients face to face as well. So obviously, when we weren't able to do that anymore, we had to switch to a lot of online tools as well. And we were actually.
But it's a completely different muscle, and Thomas is right. So if you're a professional broadcaster and a TV host, you're used to standing in front of a camera. There's no audience or hardly any audience.
Yeah.
And it's when you're trained to do that, it's much different from someone who is a consultant who is used to seeing people in front of him, and he can actually react to people. So it sounds like a tiny difference, but it's a huge difference. It's a completely different muscle. And I agree with Aki as well. We need to all of us. We need to be much more creative, and we can't just stand there, open our laptops and say, listen guys, this is our story. You have to think much more about the storyline, and that's definitely a challenge, and all of us, we have to embrace that challenge, and we have to change our pricing. You can't, if I was really good in a live workshop with many people. I could teach everyone how this works. I can interact with everyone. But now I have to also understand that my pricing, I'm not as good because I need to practice this a little bit. So I have to change my pricing a little bit. Yeah.
I was actually earlier this day, I was thinking as well, especially for people like comedians as well, who are so reliant on an audience. This must be really different as well, having to do this without an audience or very small audience, because obviously they react to their cues the audience give them as well.
Yeah.
So we have a few questions from our audience. If money would not be an issue, what would be your dream life event?
my dream life event. I mean, I would love to be on stage with a famous band, virtually if possible, or something like this, and sing a song and have a nice voice.
Would you do this in VR?
Yeah, I mean, you can do that, but I mean, at the moment, you can basically just watch live content, but you can't be there and interact. So maybe that would be and having a complete. I mean, the challenge to answer this a little bit more seriously is, I believe big trade shows. Someone mentioned South by Southwest. In the future, it will be normal. In 1, 2, 3 years, it will be normal that you're buying a ticket and last minute you're deciding, oh, you know what? No, I can't be asked to travel there. I will join from online, and it will be a different. When you join online, it's going to be a hybrid event. You're not going to be. It's going to be the same feeling. When the people go to network, you will be there as well. But there will be new technology for this. You will be there as an avatar. You will. It won't be exactly the same, but it will be much better than today, where you're just following an online stream. There will be new technology coming up where we can join even the networking at location.
Yeah. Right. We're quite tight on time again. One more question. What other live content do you follow or love or see as a kind of industry benchmark? So something that you look up to?
That's a good question. I must say, I don't know. I give some example. I must say the best thing I've seen so far was the IFA in Berlin, the trade show there. Mm-hmm. For a professional B2B enterprise event. They've done it really good. They've recreated in a software called Rooms with 3 O's. They've recreated all the stalls and the booths you've seen physically. They've recreated virtually. So at first I thought it looks tacky because it looked like Second Life. Yeah? You remember this software from 10 years ago, but it worked really well, and it had a lot of access as well. There was 100,000 people in this online trade show. So this was a good example of how it can be in the future enterprise events.
Mm. Then one last question from myself as well. You were talking earlier on, and I think Aki was saying this as well, about Zoom fatigue. Do you think there might be something like tech fatigue as well if you spend so much time online or doing events online or in digital space? especially with all the new technology coming out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you always need you need to always have the opportunity to meet people in real life, and it's difficult now because of the lockdown. So I think, and I never say that we will in the future we will run around with a glass like this 8 hours a day. I don't think that. I think 1 or 2 years time it will be normal that we'll say, oh, okay, there's a meeting in this technology, and then I go for 10 minutes in a meeting with this technology, and then I take it off again. So I think. But yeah, I think there will be technology, especially if that's always what we see with new technology. I think you asked this to Thomas. We see that we're using the old patterns in new technology, and this leads to tiredness. So this is why Zoom fatigue happened, because we're trying to do the same method of leading a workshop on Zoom. And as Aki said, and me, we need to completely rethink storyline. We need to interact much more and stuff like this. So yes, I agree, tech fatigue, but it's always that leads to improvements.
It reminds me as well as when they started switching from traditional newspaper to their online platform, and they tried to recreate. Yeah, exactly. So you try to recreate the same pattern in a digital platform.
So just be patient, everyone. I think COVID came a little bit too early for us. To us, it will be much better with the next worldwide crisis. Then we have more technology.
Thanks very much, Nick. Diversity we have going on with your different backgrounds and all the different expertise you bring into the crowd. We can now move on to our last speaker for today, and just need to swatch here. A round off the evening with the last speaker, Esther An. She is the head of UX at YouTube TV, which is a premium live TV streaming service, and her focus especially is on designing subscription experiences for both YouTube Music and YouTube TV. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what you can add to the crowd. Hi, Esther.
Hi, Lizzie. Thanks so much for having me here. And that was a really great talk from everyone. So hopefully I can build upon what everyone has talked about today. I am just get a thumbs up if you could see my screen. Okay, great. All right. So yeah, I'm here to talk about a little bit about what I'm doing over at YouTube TV. I lead the user experience team for YouTube TV. And for those of you not familiar, YouTube TV is a separate premium live TV service with over 80 major broadcasting cable networks and local sports networks. So it's quite different from the regular YouTube that most people are familiar with free video content from creators. And YouTube TV features a cloud-based DVR without storage space limits, and it really allows you to stream on your phone, tablet, computer, and TV. And a big thing for us when we launched the product in 2017 was really thinking about the value that it provides for our members. And it was a different model from a lot of what cable provided, which is that you didn't have any commitment or contracts. You could cancel at any time, which really created a flexible viewing model. And in terms of our product and design goals, it's pretty simple. It's really about providing viewers with new ways to experience the TV they love, but delivered in a way that actually meets their needs. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we're doing that. One area that we've been really focused on is the live watching experience. When you think about traditional TV, it's kind of a one-size-fits-all model where you turn on the TV and you kind of just hear or see whatever is playing. Our product and design teams have really spent a lot of this time thinking about what could enhance that viewing experience, especially when it comes to live sports, something that we know a lot of people really enjoy about live TV. This player experience or this surface is an area we've been investing in to showcase some of those unique YouTube TV features. And this is where I think there's a lot of opportunity to change the way people actually watch. So again, when we were designing this, thinking about the traditional model of TV is you turn on a live broadcast. If you happen to join after start time, then you just happen to miss it, right? You kind of just jump in where it is. We wanted to make it easier for sports fans to be able to catch up to games live. And they might be able to do that just by getting the best key plays. And so we wanted to enable them to jump into the live experience where it is actually live, or go into the key plays, or go in here and see live stats, scores from their favorite teams, and not be able to actually leave their viewing experience. So it's being able to get all this real-time information and have a more enhanced viewing experience. And then COVID came, right, as everyone's mentioning, and sports kind of just stopped, went on a big halt. And so that, made us kind of reconsider and think about a lot of things. So as designers, what we always do is we went back and we conducted a diary study to better understand the shifts in some of our member viewing habits. I work with an amazing UX research team, and my colleague Jessica Palmer led this study. And the study was really asking households to tell us about their TV watching habits during the period we were all sheltering in place. And I'll speak briefly to some key themes that emerged for us. One is obviously people were watching a lot of TV. I don't know about you guys, but I know I was watching a lot of TV. I'm still watching a lot of TV at home. And it was, people are using it to entertain their entire household while sheltering in place. People are reporting watching movies more than ever before, seeking out TV series, you name it. They were really just looking for ways to stay engaged and also maybe just have live TV playing in the background for noise and comfort. I kid you not, but this is a quote that we heard from one of our members. It really was essential, secondary, of course, to toilet paper and food. And so some of the other insights was that although there was a lot of TV, there were challenges, right, with just finding fresh content. This was a hard time for sports fans who were really frustrated with lack of compelling live content. Sports went on, hold, as I mentioned, and that's what a lot of people were subscribing to the TV service for. So we noticed viewer habits were shifting, and they were seeking out longer forms of TV content. Bingeable series and movies were more on an uptake on our platform. And there was a really big concern of just running out of fresh content. In terms of just information and news, initially people were really flocking to get the latest news. I mean, it was really important to understand what was happening with COVID. But then it just became overload, and people wanted to start to limit their news exposure. Just the impact of well-being, a lot of negativity, just kind of shielding kids at home. And so some people were wanting to even turn away from news on TV and only seek news headlines. On the plus side, we saw that some families we spoke to were really taking this opportunity to create special memories around watching TV, which is something they normally wouldn't get the chance to do in all their busy lives. Some viewers were texting and calling frequently to discuss a show that they would know others were watching. So there was a really opportunity for people to become connected, and the watch experience helping them to do that. And as Nick mentioned, sports was interesting, right? Fan engagement really took on a new meaning. Once sports picked up again, live sports fans were hungry for it, right? And they're ready to get engaged, but there was a lot of changes with the sports climate, postponed games, players out on leave. And so people were looking for other ways to get engaged, and we zoned in on fantasy sports players. So players who actually engage in fantasy leagues. This was an interesting time as well to sort of augment that experience. So it wasn't just the consumer habits that were changing, but we noticed that the industry was experiencing a shift as well. Many content providers were reaching out to consumers directly, so you could see how they were expanding reach. Like NBA was creating new direct-to-consumer offerings, but you could see a lot of these new services going direct into people's homes. This was pretty evident, which is during the pandemic, people weren't going to the movie theaters. I hope you weren't going to the movie theater. But so movie releases still needed to come out, but they were going directly into homes. And there's been a lot happening here, right? With many of these streaming services previewing and launching movies directly there was some really interesting news in the recent weeks with Warner Brothers and HBO Max, where they're deciding to launch a lot of that content directly on certain platforms. So this was changing the game in terms of content. We also saw like a real acceleration in the launch of new features. A lot of these streaming services were launching cool new features. We saw a lot around co-watching experiences, because you wouldn't be able to watch with your friends or go somewhere, how could we enable them to connect? And so Hulu and Disney Plus were doing some neat things. So for us, what did we do? Well, we all went to work at home, experienced a shift as well. Got some comfy chairs, right? That was like critical working from home, is make sure you have a decent office chair. And then my team really went focused on what we were continuing to do from the onset, was really think about experience-focused approach to the product. Content is important, but it wasn't the only thing. And so it's how could we think about core threads throughout our product? And that was around like, even if you're at home, can you feel the presence of watching with others? Discovery, helping people find quality content, especially when things were stalling or not as frequent in terms of releases. How could they find relevant other programs to watch? And then engagement, just doing what we were continuing to do with what I showed you earlier, but only enabling people to watch on their own terms, watch live TV in a way that suits them, based on when they want to watch, how they want to watch, and being empowered to drive this experience. So I'll talk about a couple of cool new things that we did during this time. One was thinking about just important content. It was a really crazy time. It's still a crazy time, but creating unique viewing experiences. We launched a couple of core shelves of content on the home surface, just highlighting important issues around race and culture. So we launched these shelves focused on human curated playlists that amplify Black voices and perspectives. So this was a really exciting and important launch for us. We also focused on bringing movies and shows, rentals and purchases of new releases directly within YouTube TV. We know that this is something that people were interested in doing and treating their households. This was something I was really excited about, which is news segments. So this enables YouTube TV users to go directly into certain segments of a news program. So if you wanted to just catch up on COVID-related news or election results, you didn't have to sit through the entire program, but you could jump through the relevant segments. And then lastly, a launch around fantasy leagues. So we know that with our sports fans, engaging in fantasy leagues was really important, and we wanted to think about how that data could augment their TV viewing experience. The goal here wasn't to replace their fantasy apps, but to let them watch and view real-time stats on their players, follow their leagues, and be able to all do this without leaving the TV. So that just gives a quick overview. There's a lot more. Stay tuned. If you haven't, I hope you get to check out the product. And I'm hoping everyone has a healthy and happy new start to a new year.
Thank you, Esther. That was really interesting. I wrote something down as well. With what Nick was saying earlier about the new tech that will be coming in the next few years, do you think there is any tech that you could also incorporate in a streaming environment, or something that you see happening that you can combine or something?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the Nick presenting out on the really sort of intelligent camera views is something that's really important, and it's relevant for live TV viewing, because you might want to just follow specific players. You might want to, especially if you are really engaged in maybe fantasy and you want to just zone in on certain games, players, and being able to have that flexibility where we can tune into that and enable viewers to do that. That's a really interesting opportunity. Multiple camera angles, unique views. The fanless stadiums is probably going to be with us for quite some time. So it's like, how do you still feel like you're experiencing actual live sports And so thinking about how we can enable presence. Maybe it's like sharing sentiment, where when something, is there's a goal or something amazing happened, that you can sort of share or feel that. I think there's some really interesting things there.
I think especially the presence is something that makes it feel so different, because obviously when you're at an event or you're somewhere, you feel the people around you, or even if something is ending towards the end of the evening, you kind of have this transitioning phase, which now that you don't have live events, and with sports events especially, I think, where you kind of try to bridge that experience to see how you can still give them a sense of presence. I find that really interesting. We have some other questions from our audience. Someone's asking, how can TV change the world for a better? That's a very big question.
How can TV pave the world for the better? Yeah, it's a really important question. It's something that myself and the team think about. We want to work on products that are really helping people. And I think when it comes to TV and live events, it's connecting people with culture and what's happening around the world, and being exposed to things that they wouldn't be exposed to, and seeing different perspectives. And I think that that's an opportunity that we can really continually weigh in. It's not about crafting one-sided perspectives. It's about enabling them to access all different types of content, and form perspectives of their own. And I think that that is continually the opportunity.
We have a question from Thomas as well. He's asking, how far have YouTube's news products got at predicting what news people want to read versus just allowing them to skip to other related content?
Yeah, I don't really know if I would speak to like the prediction part. I think it's, with YouTube TV specifically, it's providing personalized experiences based on like the channels, the networks, the commentary that you are, interested in. We want to be able to provide that front and center. And then as shown with like the new segments, that's enabling you to just be able to see an array of the content in a smart way that's delivered to you, and then being able to digest in the time or amount that you can actually put in.
One last question. I like the example of movies skipping directly to stream, but in the example of the new Wonder Woman from HBO, they decided to only stream in regions locked in the US. I think this is a core problem of big companies not understanding the internet. What is your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole climate is changing so rapidly, and it seems like to be on the news headlines almost every day. I feel like we're trying to sort of adapt, but the way I'd like to design the product is to be inclusive and ensure that our members are getting the best experience and having access to the stuff. I mean, providing content at the time it's released is important. We're trying to do our best, and it's a lot of sort of different players, different partners, different media companies really trying to figure out how to stay afloat during this really incredibly unprecedented time.
Great. Thanks very much, Esther. We're almost out of time as well. Again, I want to thank, and I hope that you yourself found each other interesting, and you could maybe take down some notes or something for the future. To close off, we usually hand out speakers' gifts, but we wanted to avoid another Amazon voucher or another inspiring book. Thomas, you look disappointed. So we decided to donate your speakers' gifts to Women in Tech, which is an organization that tries to close the gender gap and tries to encourage women to pursue a career in new tech. So I hope that's in everybody's interest. And I want to thank my colleagues as well, especially Alex and Felix, who made this tech setup possible for us tonight. And I think most of you were in contact with them as well, as they asked you to join us for our event tonight. And obviously everybody else at the Good Patch team, who is always very supporting, and I hope most of them are watching tonight. Big thank you again, and I hope to see you again soon.